Muito boa tarde para todos. Good afternoon, everyone. Muito boa tarde. Bem-vindos a mais uma sessão do Congresso 49º da Luso-American Education Foundation. Muito boa tarde àqueles que nos acompanham aqui no Zoom. Boa tarde àqueles que nos vão acompanhar através das redes sociais. Muito obrigado aos grupos que estão a partilhar também. Portanto, nós estamos extremamente gratos a todos, porque esta manhã não sabemos, mas nos primeiros 2 dias ultrapassamos mais de 6.200 pessoas a quem chegamos. Isto é muito bom num congresso desta natureza, que não seria possível, obviamente, se fosse, portanto, presencial. Mas, entretanto, esta sessão, apesar de ser sobre o ensino da língua e cultura portuguesas, vamos fazê-la em inglês, e a razão que a vamos fazer em inglês é precisamente para chegar àqueles que não percebem a língua portuguesa. Assim, podemos falar dos programas, das oportunidades, dos triunfos e também, obviamente, dos desafios. So we'll switch to English right now. Once again, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Luso American Education Foundation and the PBBI at Fresno State, welcome to all of you. This is third session of today, the last day of the Luso American Education Foundation Conference. We began on Thursday with our first session at 10 in the morning, and we'll end this afternoon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This session is called Language, Legacy, and the Next Generation. It is about the teaching of the Portuguese language and cultures, of course, at various levels. It's a discussion on how to pass the Portuguese language and cultural fluency, whatever, in all the different cultures. We do not have just one culture. We have many different cultures in the Portuguese language, in the Lusosphere, and the Lusophonia. And so how to pass them on to youth and to adults, how to build bridges, and especially how to build bridges within our own language of the different cultures in our own language and the different identities, but also how to build languages in a multicultural state like California. So I want to thank all of the different participants. I first want to thank, obviously, my friend and colleague, José Luis da Silva, who is here, who will be kind of giving his thoughts also here and there, because he has had many years experience in education in the public schools and private schools as well. And welcome also my good friend Renato Alvin, who is a professor of Portuguese at Cal State Stanislaus, and who is doing a wonderful job, who took a program that barely existed and made it a famous program. He works very hard, and he's a superb educator. I've had students who have come to Fresno State to do masters, not in Portuguese, but in other areas that I've met, and they've taken 1 or 2 classes from him, and they have high marks for him, and that's wonderful to hear. Renato does great work at Cal State Stanislaus. We also have Clemente Fagundes, who will be joining us. He's having some issues with the camera, but we'll get that on. Clemente is a Portuguese high school teacher, has been for over a decade and a half now. I always can tell when Clemente, how long Clemente has been teaching by the year that José Luis retired. So, because Clemente started teaching basically around the same year that José Luis retired from San Jose and Nilsa Bittencourt retired from here. And Clemente, of course, has been teaching, I believe, for at least 15 years at Mission Oak High School. And Sandra Carapinha is a online educator who has a wonderful program with students, I would say, I know for sure throughout the United States and Canada, but I would say throughout the world. And does a wonderful program in not just with her classes and her students and from all levels of education, learning Portuguese for various different reasons, but also has a lot of online programs and online tools that and sorry, Sandra, but to tell you that without paying you, but I do use some of them for my students to use for homework, because I think you do such a wonderful job, and they can go on YouTube. And so and if there are a few students that are following this through Canvas, so I'm sure they recognize you. So thank you all for joining us. I'm going to ask you the first question. It was a brief introduction, I know, but and that is basically looking at the role of educators in renewal and leadership. And so, from from online classes to classes in person. And those of us in public education, we have dealt with online now. And as Renato mentioned, we still are teaching some classes online. And because our students also demand that they are online because it's easier for them and some of their other responsibilities. So from classrooms to online platforms, what strategies that, in your mind, can professors, can teachers use to make the Portuguese language engaging and relevant for today's students? Of course, we're talking about different contexts, college, high school, online, and shaping the cultural pride. And when I mean cultural pride, I don't mean the Portuguese pride. I mean the cultural pride in learning about that language and its multiple cultures, whether it's from Portugal, Brazil, Africa, Timor, wherever it may be. And so I'll start with Renato from Cal State Stanislaus. Renato, first of all, once again, welcome. And what kind of techniques and some of the things that you use to get students engaged and to get students to take your class? Because more and more students are opting for not taking a language class, and your classes are still full.
Yeah, thank you, Denise, and boa tarde, good afternoon, everybody, for giving us this opportunity to talk about the importance of our educational mission, I should say. Thank you for the invitation and congratulations for the 49th edition. And here at CSU Stan, we offer a minor in Portuguese. And this, in a way, it sets a little a bar about most of the students, how far most of them plan to take Portuguese. Most of them take the first semester of Portuguese as a requirement. And sometimes I ask every semester in class, and sometimes the students why they're taking Portuguese. And sometimes a lot of students feel a little embarrassed to say, oh, it's required. And I tell them, no, I'm glad you're here because they're also a big chunk of the students who take Portuguese. And my first thought is about the importance of my mission as an educator to create awareness about the importance of identity. Even if they're second generation Portuguese speaker, third generation, or if they are the speaker of a different language other than Portuguese and English, I try to highlight the importance of identity and how language presents more than just learning the signs of ways of communicating or exchanging information. Because when we learn a language, we are also learning a lot about the culture, about the history, about the people's origins, about the choices their grandparents, great-grandparents, their parents, and also the choices they will be making towards their career or their personal lives. So for me, first is the importance of identity. So I highlight this in my classes, and not only for those who are choosing to follow on studying Portuguese later on. Also, for the courses that I teach in upper division, culture courses or literature courses, and all the courses we teach here are in Portuguese. So we, in the end, the public for our classes have to be really well engaged or well interested in the language, or they won't follow up with the minor. And we have successfully having students minoring in Portuguese every academic year, the end of every academic year. And also because the university values a lot the diversity and the multidisciplinary and multicultural aspect of education, I tell them how important it is for them to get this kind of cultural sensitiveness through learning another culture. Most of them, as we also highlight here at the university, about 70% or more are first generation college students. They come with some expectations about college experience in a way that sometimes they cannot get from home. They don't have a brother, or their parents didn't go to college. So I believe part of our mission is also to bring this awareness. And another aspect is that 60% or more are Hispanics, identify themselves as Hispanics or Latinos, and the proximity with the Spanish also makes it in a way easier for us to bring the importance about another culture. They already have contact with the second culture. So we multiplying this, adding Portuguese makes it even more important. And finally, because of the job market, I also bring to them, like, if you're from the Central Valley, if you're planning to stay in the Central Valley after you graduate, it's important that in a way you're expected already to speak Spanish. And if you offer a third language or a third first knowledge of a third language, you're going to be ahead of your competition in the job market. So it's all these aspects about personal and academic and professional lives that Portuguese could bring up and make them even more successful in their adult life.
Very well, thank you so much. Sandra, we'll turn to you and then to Clemente. Your reason, of course, explain a little bit about your project, first of all, and the multitudes and different age groups that you have as students throughout North America, especially.
Yes, thank you. So it's very interesting to listen to Renato, because I was thinking at Learn European Portuguese Online, what we do is we teach online, of course, but we teach all ages. From our youngest student is 5 to our oldest is probably close to 80. But it's interesting that the niche that we have less students is college students. That is definitely not where we have most students. I would say our students are either children between 8 and 12, 14, and then mostly 35 and above. So we're talking about little different populations, let's say. But yeah, it was very interesting to listen to Renato, and I agree with this idea of people learn Portuguese for different reasons. Sometimes it's this sense of belonging, if it's a heritage language. A lot of people, as you know, Dinesh, a lot of people didn't learn the language through their grandparents. Others did. And the ones that did still remember a little bit, and they want to keep that sense of belonging to Portugal and to the Portuguese community. So I definitely feel that in the recent years, there's more that need of sense of belonging. People visit more Portugal. They want to connect more to their country, and so there's that bridge that they need to build. Then we also have a lot of students that have no connections, let's say no Portuguese parents or grandparents. They're mostly American. I do have students from all over the world, but I would say between Canada and the US is 80% of our students. And so there's this curiosity for Portugal, and I'd like to know your opinion on this. I think this curiosity about Portugal and this popularity of Portugal is just a great opportunity to spread the Portuguese language. and to have more learners throughout all ages. And I do feel that there's in the US a growth curiosity by Americans in general that visit Portugal, go there for a trip, and they're, oh, it's a wonderful country, and they come back, and I'd love to learn more about Portugal and learn their language. So there's a great opportunity there that I think universities could also take advantage, let's say, in that sense. And, in the job market, of course, there's a lot of startups, a lot of companies. I just yesterday was contacted by a student that is Dutch from the Netherlands, and he said, "Oh, my company has an office in Lisbon, and I want to learn Portuguese. I go to Portugal every month. I love it." So the fact that a lot of companies have offices in Portugal are also a great opportunity in terms of jobs. Yes.
Indeed, yeah, and it's unique how you have, all those. And I know that you connect, of course, students with, you have a network of teachers as well in Portugal that connect with these students because you can't be teaching all of them at the same time, obviously.
Exactly, because we focus mostly on one-on-one teaching. Now we do have group classes as well, but I would say 80% of our classes are one-on-one. So what we do, I have a team of 9 teachers in Portugal, and we just try to match the best teacher to the student based on their goals, and find the perfect schedule so the student can have classes for a long period of time. It's not like in college, we don't work by semesters. We have students for years with us.
Yeah, indeed. It's a total different concept, but I agree with you. Portugal está na moda, we say in Portuguese, and I think all levels of education should. This is an opportunity for many communities and community-based schools, or escolas comunitárias, as they're called, for some of them to start, or some of them to even look at themselves if they're, if their numbers are not growing, they should be, and maybe we need to focus more on, as Renato said, and other ethnicities as well, not just on sons and daughters or grandsons or granddaughters of the Portuguese Americans, because there are other folks that are very, very interested. Clemente, your thoughts. Basically, the question was to tell us a little bit about your program and how, different strategies to engage the students and to inspire them, of course, to have pride in learning the language. And I don't mean pride just because they're of Portuguese background. Pride because they're learning, as Renato said, a third language. Here in the Valley, a lot of our students are Spanish speakers or near native Spanish speakers. It's a way for them to learn a third language, and this phenomenon has been happening for years. But I think it's increased a bit more, especially in the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years. So a little bit of thoughts on how your program's going and what you focus on.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, for being here. Nice to see Renato and Luis. Haven't seen you guys in a while, and first time meeting Sandra. And so I basically teach in a high school, and from different levels, from freshmen to seniors. Um, um, the phenomenon is in learning, especially in high school level, there's got to be a desire, and I think that it's maybe for everything, a desire to want to learn. Yes, my classes are very much a mixed. It's not just the third generation or fourth generation that are Portuguese, and of course they do love their culture. But at times I don't see the desire to want to continue on learning the language. They want to be part of the culture and the Portuguese culture, but not so much the desire to really, really want to learn the language. 3 years ago, I had a nice registration of Portuguese ones, and a lot of students that were of Portuguese descent, even of two parents. Seeing more and more that now some of the Luz American students, one parent is of Portuguese descent, the other is either Hispanic or other ethnicity. But they enjoy being in a class. It's just a desire to push them to learn. I see more desire in Hispanic students. And for example, I have this young man. He's a senior. He only took the language. He took Portuguese 1. He could have continued, but he'll come to me anytime he comes to talk to me. He's taking my class this year again. He's always talking to me in Portuguese. He's learned is the Brazilian dialect. He speaks Spanish. His mom was born in Toledo, Spain, but he loves to speak the language. He loves to learn, and sometimes he'll say things that words that are not mix them up. We all do. I do still, but he has a desire to learn the language. I wish it could be more throughout all my students, and have that vontade, that desire to continue learning a language. What do I do? Basically I'm getting to the point where even today I needed my daughter to help me here with technology. If not, I'd be talking, but you wouldn't be seeing me. And so technology, I do what I can, but it's not a whole lot. And I know there's programs out there that we could incorporate. I think there's a program that we're trying to use right now that is bought from Portugal, Escola Virtual. But and it's helpful because maybe in upper levels, if we seem to have some combo classes now, so it makes it difficult. But I still think I'm not a big believer of always just being on a screen. I believe that we need, as a teacher, need to interact with the students. The students need to interact with us, with hearing our voices and our pronunciations and us speaking the language, and them copying or imitating or doing their best to speak the language also. We try to invite them to cultural events, and of course, like when Nij was the teacher, try to offer the extra credit, because they come for the extra credit. They should come for just the desire to come and learn and expand. But if we offer the extra credit, they'll come. And but it's only a few that come. You would expect a good number, 5%, 10% of my students to show up, but they don't. So it's kind of been always a struggle, I guess.
And the ones who come sometimes are the ones who don't need the extra credit, isn't that it?
100%.
Those students who go to everything and are the top in everything. I'm noticing one thing also, and then we'll talk about it. I'm noticing also one thing, which is there's a false sense of fluency, it seems like. Or say, for example, I have a couple of students at Fresno State. I've had it. They say, "Oh, I'm fluent in Portuguese." Okay, well then you shouldn't be taking this class because it's a level 1. You're gonna be bored to death. Just challenge the class and do the test. And I said, okay, but let's talk a little bit in Portuguese, and they can't. Oh, I understood you, but I can't answer. So, well, you're not fluent if you can't speak a language. Fluency is, but sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes the parents want to be, want to be their best friend and say, yeah, my son and my daughter is fluent in Portuguese. Well, I sometimes question my own fluency because we get in this American world that we speak English a lot, and fluency is all we all know. Fluency is what is to be fluent. It has different levels. Can you communicate in the language? Obviously, that's the important thing. But I think there's kind of this this a false sense that sometimes is passed to young students, and I'm seeing now at college that from parents that já falas português. Well, yeah, but first of all, we can always learn some more. And second of all, it's hard to be fluent in Portuguese. And I ask them, and they say, "Oh no, we don't speak it at home. We speak it maybe once in a week when grandma comes over, if that." So it's hard to be fluent in a language if you only speak it. But somehow the parents are giving them this sense of fluency, and then they get to the classroom, and it's like, okay, this is that's something different.
I'd like just to add, just because you brought that up, I do have, I mean, it takes the parents, it takes a lot. I had a student that graduated last year. Their last name is Lewis, but so the father's American and the mothers were both immigrants, immigrated when they were 9 and 10. He was fluent. And I have his sister this year as a freshman, more timid young lady. She is completely fluent. And we will have conversation. It's not a false fluency. It is not a broken up Portuguese. It is a very proper Portuguese, learned. And the mother is a French teacher and a Spanish teacher in Porterville. But I would have to say I admire the effort, the hard work, because that takes a lot. I have my own kids who can understand, but no, they're not fluent. And I even get criticized. Oh, you're a Portuguese teacher, your kids don't speak Portuguese. Well, we get home and we just start talking, and yeah, that doesn't happen. But I do have to commend this parent in particular, both her son and now their daughter. Uh,
Yeah,
fluent
yes, they are. I know they are.
Portuguese.
I know they are. The kid is fluent because I've had an exchange with him at Fresno State, and he's fluent. Indeed, indeed. And there are some, but it's one here and one there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But false fluency can be something that can also then be detrimental because they to learning because that's not the way I know the language, etc. But it's all these different things that pull up. So Luis, anything to add to this? I know you've been out of the classroom, but I think we're all kind of looking at Sandra has customers all over, and learners all over. It's a bit different situation, but the rest of us in different classrooms, the numbers sometimes aren't what we want them to be. I mean, they're good. All of us are in public education, the three of us, myself, Renato, and Clemente. Our numbers are good, and we're grateful for that. But there are a lot of programs out there struggling, and so I don't know how this is going to, change. What are your thoughts?
First of all, hi, hello everybody. I've known Renato and Clemente, of course, you Denise for a long time. Sandra is the first time that I listened to her. I was very impressed. And I was as somebody who was teaching for several decades and now has been away from it. I look back and look at a general perspective of language teaching and Portuguese language teaching and the teachers themselves, because I've not touched on a little bit on this, but learning a language is a very human experience. Our brain is wired to connect, to communicate, to socialize, and the personality of the teacher is essential. If you look at a successful program, especially the high school, the personality of the teacher is essential. Successful programs have charismatic or personable teachers that care about their students, and they are able to communicate that not only that personal connection, but also the love of the language, the love of the culture. And Renato said something that was also very interesting to me, is that you cannot, which I know, you cannot separate language from culture, because we know that culture is a human endeavor. It's a product from our personalities. So this is essential. I would like to take the discussion also to the point of the importance of how we look at our Portuguese programs, how we expand it. We talked a lot about Portuguese and Brazilian versions. They are not that different. Having been a Portuguese, Spanish, and French teacher, I can tell that Spanish and French have their own varieties, and nobody discusses that. I could give examples. We have to. It doesn't mean that we have to be all things to all people. For example, as a Portuguese teacher, we had an international baccalaureate program in which I taught Portuguese language, culture, and literature. But the culture and literature was from all over the Lusophone world, from Brazil, from Africa, most of it from Portugal, but not necessarily a lot from Brazil. And I didn't have to impersonate a Brazilian to teach Brazilian culture or to teach Brazilian literature. So we, in our own ways, in our authentic ways, we can open the doors and windows of the Lusophone world to everybody. And I know that Renato is a good example of that. And it's wonderful that we have someone of a Brazilian background teaching in the Portuguese language and culture, which obviously is a Lusophone program. So this personable attitude, which I see in all of you, is essential to the development of our programs. Our connections with the students, our connections with the community. I think we have a lot of work to do in our communities. But yes, this openness. I am sad that the program that Denise and others developed to have a strategic plan for the language teaching of the Portuguese language, and from there derived the term PBBI, Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute. Exactly the idea, beyond borders. It's not just for this island or for this archipelago, for this country, it's for everybody. I'm sad that the community and the powers that be in Portugal have not embraced that wonderful work, which was done by people from all areas of the Portuguese teaching world in California.
Yeah, indeed. It has not been embraced, and I don't think it ever will be. But I wanted to move on to the aspect of building bridges, within and beyond the classroom. We talked a little bit about that, and so and with that same tone, engaging and motivating students. We've also talked a little bit about that, and all of us, have, of course, different perspective depending on what we teach. But I'll start with Renato again. Renato, when we look at the university level, I mean, it's not like students are very busy. It was different in high school where the extra credit worked a bit more because they normally did not work, and so, or very few. But in college level, it's hard to get them even to go to our Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute events because they're working. As you mentioned, the same thing at CSU Fresno is the same thing at CSU Stanislaus. Over 70% of our students are the first in their family to go to college. Over 70% of them are receiving some kind of a help, through a federal program, which who knows how long that's gonna continue, but that's a different story. And so, and most of my students, I would say over 65 to 70 are working. They are working as they go. They have part-time jobs, and many of them, 18 to 20 hours a week, which is a lot considering they're taking, 12 or 16 units in some case. So, how do you build bridges within even the classroom, Renato, to include, all of the different perspectives of the Portuguese world, of the Portuguese speaking world, not just the Portuguese world, but the Portuguese speaking world, and especially to build bridges with the majority of your students, as you said, who are Hispanic, and I find that ultimately very challenging and very a wonderful opportunity because they can always identify with words that are similar or with concepts. Oh well, yeah, well, I'm use a simple one. You guys have Fatima, we have Guadalupe. I mean that kind of connection that is made, whether it be through culture, and it kind of makes them, when they see that connection, what are your thoughts? Does it make them want to even learn more about something, knowing that there are some similarities as well, not just differences?
Yeah, it's I thought about the profile of our students as really good asset. Spanish should be a partner. It should not be something that you look like, no, this is a completely different language to set us apart. But even the opposite, we need to bring the similarities. And what you mentioned about fluency before happens. I observe it very much in my classroom because students can be functional. Sometimes, the heritage speakers would tell me, I have this conversation with my grandma, and we understand each other. And I believe they can function because the environment or the amount of the vocab they use, they understand each other and they can function there. But what I perceive also is that some Spanish speakers, after I would say the third or fourth week, they start believing that they are already speaking Portuguese because it's so similar, verb conjugation and pronunciation. But over time, they start seeing the differences happening. And I try to keep that sensation that, yes, your Portuguese is great, you're growing, but we need to now start separating what it is Portuguese and what is just something between, because this is your step towards the proficiency. I like to use in the upper division classes that I teach in culture and literature, some topics that I believe that can be kind of universal, but at the same time make them connect. When you talk about identity or the concept of saudade, this word that we are proud of having it in Portuguese, and we love this word and we love what it means, and to bring be it through readings or music or fado, or when we talk about identity, we're talking about marginality. What is the concept of marginality? If you speak a language or if you don't, what makes you belong or not? Who decides who is a marginal? Why? And so all this questioning, I try to bring it to my classes to help students connect whatever their identity is to the importance of valuing and learning about their own culture, about their selves, and about a different culture. I also have once a year, a teacher from Pittman High School, Professor James Tost, me invites me convida, he invites me to go to his Portuguese classes to talk about our programs in his classes, and they have a campus visit also once a year. We try to bridge this also this connection because not all the students in high school also who take Portuguese are third generation. They're heritage speakers. And so we try also to make the university some kind of a continuation of what they have already experienced and bring it to a more connection to a professional level of the language.
Wonderful, wonderful thoughts and wonderful information, and indeed making connections and validating, what they bring, their identity to the classroom. That's very, very important. Sandra, in your case, as far as the one-on-one, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about and even play a little bit of a video that you did, and I think and I saw it online, and as I said, I follow your page, and I actually use your page as supplementary for the students, because with all of the lessons, there's always something that I call on your own, that there's no grade. It's just, there's resources there. Look at these resources if you're serious about this, and there's things you can explore on your own time. And so I use one of your YouTube channels as that as well. If you don't mind, you did a video on the Vulcão dos Capelinhos, or the Capelinhos, and you found that was important. Tell us a little bit about why you did it and what you've had as far as some response from community and from your students as well.
Thank you. Yes. So I started my YouTube channel because at the time, 7-8 years ago, there wasn't a lot of European Portuguese content on YouTube. So I thought, since I was teaching and I didn't have a lot of resources, I thought, well, I'll make my own and make them accessible to everyone. So on my channel, you find different types of videos. Many videos I teach in Portuguese. I explain in English, but then I explain in English and give the examples in Portuguese for students that are maybe more beginners. But I also have a series of videos where I speak all in Portuguese. I pick a topic, usually related to Portuguese history or related to a Portuguese person. Like I have one about Saramago, I have one about who else? I can't remember his name now. Mas tenho o terremoto de Lisboa, I have one about the earthquake. So in those videos, I speak all in Portuguese, but I also offer the subtitles. If you go on the settings of YouTube, you can watch the video with subtitles all in Portuguese to follow what I'm saying, or you can change the subtitles and you can listen, read in English while I'm speaking in Portuguese. And I know that's a great tool for students that are different levels, right? So they can practice without anything, with English, with Portuguese, and I thought that's very interesting. So I do that. And recently I had this idea because I am Portuguese American. I was born in the US, moved to Portugal when I was 9, came back to the US when I was 33. I thought it would be, sorry, somebody's calling me. So I thought it would be very interesting to start a series of videos about the Portuguese American community, which I haven't really focused on. So I found out, one day, one of my students asked me in class, why are there so many Azorians in the US? Because she didn't know. And I'm not an expert in history, but I explained a little bit about the whales and everything. And then I said, but there's also this event. And I thought, I feel like maybe a lot of, Portuguese Americans, maybe even from that have family from the Azores, do not know this story. So I decided to make the video and explain a little bit about what's behind. And I got a lot of nice feedback from it. So it's very nice. See. Oh, you're muted.
I muted. Do you want to share with us? I know it's
Sure. I'll share a little bit very
I think it'd be
quickly.
good for us to just to break up before we go to
And
the
I'll
next.
share the sound as well. See if you can see me here. So I'll pull it just a little forward, maybe here.
Just
É
a few.
provável que, se é descendente de açorianos que se mudaram para os Estados Unidos no fim da década de 50, esta seja também a sua história. Antes de começar, lembrem-se de entre os dias 16 e 27 de setembro, a Terra tremeu mais de 200 vezes. Para os açorianos, a Terra tremer não era algo estranho, pois o arquipélago dos Açores está numa área de muita atividade sísmica. No entanto, esta grande quantidade de terremotos em tão pouco tempo não era normal e ninguém esperava o que aconteceu depois. Às 6h45 da manhã do dia 27 de setembro, algo assustador aconteceu na ponta oeste da ilha. A cerca de 100 metros dos ilhéus dos Capelinhos e a 1 quilómetro da costa, o mar começou a ferver e a borbulhar, lançando nuvens cinzentas e brancas de cinza e vapor. Para todos os que observavam, era um espetáculo.
Posso parar aqui também, mas pronto, basicamente eu explico o evento e depois as consequências, digamos, políticas, o Azorian Refugee Act, que trouxe muitos açorianos para Portugal, para os Estados Unidos, peço desculpa. E foi muito engraçado que eu fui contactada depois pelo Facebook, infelizmente eu não me lembro do nome da senhora, mas ela agradeceu-me imenso por este vídeo e ela disse-me que no dia em que foi assinado aquele Refugee Act, era o pai dela que estava lá e ela enviou uma fotografia a preto e branco, que era o pai dela que estava lá a segurar pronto, no documento. Foi muito giro. Uhum.
E são esses pontos que são importantes, portanto, fazer através da cultura numa aula de língua. E está extremamente bem feito, convém. Aliás, eu, se ainda estivesse, e talvez ainda vou usá-lo, não é? Aliás, vou usá-lo como suplemento, mas acho que em qualquer escola, escola secundária, ou mesmo escola comunitária, portanto, particularmente para aqueles com mais idade, aqueles que estão nas escolas comunitárias já com 12, 13, 14 anos, podem muito bem seguir. Está extremamente. Aliás, se forem portanto, ao canal da Sandra, tudo está, portanto, extremamente bem explicado. Ela fala devagar, ela sabe ser professora de línguas e, portanto, as pessoas podem seguir muito bem. E depois a questão de os mais avançados podem seguir em português e os outros podem seguir em inglês para sentirem que vão ter a receptividade. Portanto, há estes. Eu penso que há tanto online com os trabalhos da Sandra e outras pessoas, mas ela de facto tem sido pioneira em muitos destes vídeos. Um, portanto, que nós todos, que há muita coisa para explorar, há muita coisa boa para se aproveitar, e é pena, na minha perspectiva, é pena é que nós não aproveitemos agora tudo isto, porque não quer dizer que Portugal, por estar na moda hoje, estará na moda daqui a 10 anos. Não é? Até porque pode ser como muitos outros países europeus que também que ainda estão na moda e podem continuar na moda, mas o custo é proibitivo. Mesmo na moda, há uma faixa que não pode visitá-los, mesmo nos Estados Unidos, não é? E no Canadá. Portanto, aproveitar isto é extremamente importante para os nossos programas. Muito obrigado por ter partilhado connosco. É excelente.
Claro, claro.
Acho que todos vão concordar comigo, mas é excelente. Mas eu vi as caras todas a dizerem que sim, as pessoas a acompanharem, a mandarem, portanto, o thumbs up. Já diz?
Eu disse, estou gostando muito de ouvir em português.
Como?
Estou adorando ouvir-te falar português, mas tu mudaste de língua no meio da sessão.
Desculpe.
Eu adoro ouvir falar português. Vamos
Sorry,
a isso.
everyone.
Se quiseres, continuamos. Então, para mim é melhor até.
Natural thing. It's a natural thing. But so I hope you all understood. It was just basically talking about how Sandra's video can really be used as a tool. And this channel is open to everyone, so you can use this as a tool and you can learn language by learning also about the Azorean Refugee Act, because without the Azorean Refugee Act, there would not be this many Azoreans. We wouldn't have the same community. And also because afterwards came, the Family Reunification Act. Without those two things, the community would be very different, because the Azorean Refugee Act, as Sandra pointed out, people came from all over the Azores. There were people that claimed to be Fayalenses had never stepped a foot in Fayal, many of them even from mainland Portugal, and used the Azorean Refugee Act to come to the United States. So it's a very important moment. Clemente, passando por ti, now I'm going to go back to English. I promise I won't stick to go back and forth. And the same kind of thing, but I mean, using what Renato was saying about identity and about topics that are important to the students, that are important to the students at all levels, of course. I mean, I remember very vividly, because it's only been 8 years since I've been in high school, and soccer, and Cristiano Ronaldo and the Brazilian soccer players, those are things that are very important to students, and also your thoughts on how do you build that up, and having a diverse student base, like Renato also mentioned, because you have the ones who are near native speakers, very few of them, but you have heritage speakers, you have, of course, the Hispanic population, and others, some of the others are there for many reasons, connecting their identities to the language. And also using maybe some of this video like this one from Sandra, I think it's a great way to also teach, a little bit, because they can follow along. So just your thoughts overall on connecting the identities with the language that they're learning, and for their cultural growth as well.
Well, first of all, Sandra, I will be using your videos because I think they will be very helpful. But on my own, I already when I teach about the Azores, we do a little project, and we do it in almost all levels, because, well, I'll do a simple one, just knowledge of where the Azores are at, and then maybe next level. And I always bring up the couplings, and I always bring up the Refugee Act. And because my students, if they visit the Azores with their family, they know where the Azores is at. But a majority of them, they say, where's the Azores? Or it's in Portugal. So, well, not quite, right? So, and then the Hispanic student, Azores, what is the Azores? So I always bring that up and show them, okay, you're in Portuguese class, at least let's know what region, what place we are talking about, okay? And since we're a majority or Azorians, yeah, it's 9 islands in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and then I also explain about Portugal and all regions. But that's very nice. And the other aspect about, you just brought up soccer. Soccer is one of my loves. That's probably what made me go into teaching, because I've always coached my girls soccer. I've played, so and that probably what led me to want to become a teacher, is through coaching soccer. And now, because in my high school we started, let's say, well, I don't think Niche caught it, but it was probably 5, 6 years ago. We went into what's called a 4x4. Before, we used to have just five classes, 2 hours apiece. Now we have 8 classes on an alternative A-B days, and now it's an hour and a half. And because of that, and because I do coach, I am in charge of having boys soccer PE. They're called the soccer PE. So I take the boys out there and we do activities. And most of those boys are Hispanic. We do have some Portuguese, and they know that I'm a Portuguese teacher. And I've had some of them, because I coach them, come and take my class. I've had others just going to YouTube because they know the players that play. And now, Portugal has some great players, not just Ronaldo. You got Vitinha, you got Nunes, you got all sorts of great players that play for PSG all over Europe and all over the place. And some of them are very popular. Neymar from Brazil makes little videos all the time, and they'll approach me. Oh, hey, what does this mean? I heard him say this, and then they'll be repeating exactly what the phrases and the words or little things that these soccer players are doing. So that's opening up our language, or opening up, and I think Nij might have said that, or someone said that there is so much out there. There's the YouTubes everywhere. My frustration sometimes with my students, I guess, is this: they will look at TikToks and everything about everything else. They could just go to and look up 30 seconds, a minute, 10 seconds of anything that's Portuguese, because there is so much there. But they won't take that initiative to do that. Some will, like the student that his parents are from Toledo. He does. He goes and searches up. That's why he keeps on developing in his language. But I wish all of them, those that are interested in taking that language, to learn a little bit more. Yes, go to YouTube. Pick up a video of some person from Portugal, and then learn what they're saying. Teach yourself, or add to that. So I guess the tools are there. I would say when we started, I have only started, this is my 16th year. There wasn't that many tools like I think we have right now. I think we have quite a bit of tools, actually. It just needs to have that vontade to apply themselves to it. So.
Indeed. And high school is tough. Kids are thinking about other things, of course. College is tough too, because they're also thinking about other things. But maybe the secret is one-on-one, like Sandra does, because they're very concentrated, of course, on learning the language. I'm going to go to the last. I want to ask Sandra if she doesn't mind putting her link to her YouTube channel on the chat, just so people can have it, and then I'll put it on social media as well. But it's such a great tool, and thank you all. It's just a labor of love on her part, and we appreciate it so very, very much. I think the Portuguese government should give her, not just a big subsidy, but also a medal. For there's people getting medals. We have no idea why they're being comendadores, but she definitely deserves one. For for having, for doing this. I mean, it's just, it's just lovely. It's just wonderful. And congratulations and thank you. Congratulations and thank you very much. So let's look a little bit as we end. I promised you around an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, and going around and everybody. We'll start again with Renato. He's our favorite victim. I always have that in classroom. Ou há voluntários ou há vítimas. Escolham agora. Portanto, mas acho que o Renato vai ser voluntário em vez de ser vítima. Portanto, here we go back in Portuguese. Sorry. So the a little bit looking at the future. I don't think I wanted to basically start with the words from Sandra, which is, there's so much buzz out there about Portugal, and I think we're losing it in education if we don't do something about it. I mean, Sandra can only do so much by herself and with her team. We're a limited team, but then the colleges, high schools, elementary schools. There's some areas, that there is, a strong program, and let's be candid about it. The Turlock Hillmar area right now is the strongest because they have it at junior high school, they have it at high school. Hillmar has the immersion program, where you take 30 students in every year, 20 to 30 students in kindergarten, add those up, at the end of 7 years, that's a lot of students. So there's always one immersion class that starts every kindergarten and goes all the way up to 8th grade. But that's unique. That's one area. You look at all the other areas and we're either kind of stagnant. I know Clemente keeps his numbers up. He's great about that. But but they haven't gone down. That's not the case with your other two colleagues. They're down drastically, in one school especially. And so the other thing is that there are other areas. There's San Diego has kept, and they're thinking now about junior high, and that's great. But they have basically in their high school usually around 100 to 110 students. San Jose has gone down. The program continues, but the numbers are down from when Jose Luis was there, 15, 16 years ago. And then there's no other areas, and our areas like Artesia. The issue is if you can't do a high school or elementary school, we should have a community school, and we talked about that actually in the last panel. These community schools are 2 hours a week. They're not going to learn to be fluent, maybe, but they're going to learn some words, some vocabulary, some basic grammar, and they're going to learn some culture, and then maybe they can develop that through either an online program, one-on-one, and then continue in college if that's available. So let's look a little bit, looking ahead, what opportunities do you see for the Portuguese language education in your particular teaching context? What collaborations, digital tools, or program innovations could ensure that Portuguese remains vibrant and accessible to this and the next generation of learners, whether they be of Portuguese background or not, but especially those who are of Portuguese background. For example, Sandra has done, and I keep on referring to her because she's done this, and a lot of people don't know about this. Her web, not a web page, she has that too, but her YouTube channel. A lot of people do not know about it. I mean, it's unbelievable that there's not a link to that the Institute Camões does not use this. Okay, this program to teach, and to say there's this out there. So we know what we have in Portugal. It's very centralized. We know what we have in Brazil. Not much happening, as far as education programs also for the rest of the world. I think it's up to us. It's us here. It's us here that in our own individual communities, our own individual areas, in our own individual teaching context. So I'll start again with Renato. What do you look? What do you look? Are your thoughts on Portuguese education for the future? I know you also belong to the American Association, the Association of Teachers of Portuguese and Spanish. You've done excellent work there. I think the Spanish language is an ally and not, a competitor. So what do you think about this as far as the future? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would like to mention that what Clemente mentioned about the tools. The tools are there, and giving away our ages, or some of our ages that we saw from the cassette tape to the LPs, and then through the video cassettes, and then the CDs and DVDs, and now streaming. I think the digital tools that we continue seeing, and we know it's not going to never stop. I think we need to look at Sandra's successful experience, because online, for example, for us, I believe a big challenge is like the high demand, a much higher demand of online education. And online education has been around for a while. And after pandemic, it boomed, and we see a tendency of people still not willing to go to campus to have classes, or go to campus for meetings, and I think we have a challenge of keeping up with the digital tools that are available, and adapting not only for the online class, but also for the face-to-face interactions that we have in education. We do some international collaboration that I think has been very successful. We started since 2022, right after we saw that the pandemic. The idea was like, since now the students we cannot meet in class, how can students learn and practice speaking and listening? So we started to collaborate with universities abroad. So students, we would have them interact with native speakers. And for them, it was very important, but very also challenging to talk to a native speaker. And we started this after second semester. And we allowed them at a certain, and they had to record their interactions. And then we allowed them, after they have touched the points that we expected in the conversation, that they could also speak either in English or in Spanish with a Portuguese native speaker. So they would feel empowered, like they are the ones who are fluent in a language, helping someone else or interacting. So we believe that was a very fortunate experience that we keep doing, because in a way it filled a gap that sometimes the online interactions that, and here we're talking about 20 students or 15 students. Obviously, Sandra doing like one-on-one, this interaction is much more, can be much more intense, obviously. And also I think the idea of being assertive about how language goes beyond just a code of learning, being like a way to be part of another culture, adapting and collecting and exchanging information. I think if we can keep students with that kind of awareness that learning a language, they learn much more than just a subject matter. I think that will help us at least to keep on going while we don't know them. And AI is gonna take, which I don't believe they'll take our place, but we need to be aware of those tools as well and manage them. And again, not to be against them, but bring them in and use them to our favor.
Indeed. And according to Bill Gates, he just said that not too long ago, AI will replace all language teachers within 12 to 15 years. It's a good thing that most of us will be retired. I mean, I'm retired anyway. But the issue even is it's more dangerous than Bill Gates's opinion, which is that the California State University system, CSUs, are on the chopping block, for languages. And so obviously the one of the, we may be lucky, you know, because we have people like Renato who are very good at what they do and can keep students, but some of the other students, you know, some of the other programs with just, you know, 5 or 6 students, they're going to be disappearing here very, very quickly. Because if you cannot have in level 1, you know, 20 plus students, forget it, they're not going to keep the program. So, and funding is a problem. But Sandra, your thoughts on you know, education in your context in the future, collaborations, tools, of course, digital, you use all of them, and what programs and what innovations you think can come up, you know, to in your context and collaborative with all of us.
Well, I think the benefit of online teaching is that you can reach more people and you can reach, uh, people that are, let's say, more isolated in the sense that there might be a person that wants to learn Portuguese that lives in Chicago. There's one that's in California, one that's in Wisconsin, and you can put them together in a class and they can learn together. So I really think that one of the solutions for some of the colleges is really focusing on online because there is interest. The problem is that sometimes the people are not physically in the same space or in the same school, or so that's where partnerships, and I think the Portuguese government or Instituto Camões or should help because there is interest. And going back to what Dinesh was saying, and I was talking about this with a student the other day last week, was very interesting because there is going to be a meeting with Palcus in a week or two about the Portuguese language, which I hope to be able to go. And there is interest in the Portuguese language like never before, just like in the country Portugal. So we need to take advantage. It's now or never. And like you said, Dinesh, everybody has to do their part. I'll try to make my videos. I'll try to do, help in any way I can. But I also think it needs to come from above. It needs to come from the Portuguese government. It needs to come from Instituto Camões. There is interest, and one of my students was telling me because her husband's Italian, and she was telling me, Sandra, Italian is not a language with the amount of speakers that Portuguese has. It's spoken in a very small area of the world, and they're all over the schools of New Jersey. Most people are third, fourth generation Italians. They don't even speak Italian at home anymore, and they're everywhere. How is it that Portuguese isn't at school? There's has to be some kind of work that we can all do together to either through online and put some students together or physically. I feel like the authorities, the government, the ambassadors could do more. I honestly do because there is interest.
Indeed, and the political problem is indeed a problem. We'd be here until about 5 o'clock talking about that. Especially because not too long ago, Palcos took a leading role when Star Talk, which was a program that many of you have heard the name, was a program by the Department of Defense and the Department of State, and they chopped Portuguese, and that was actually the very first Trump administration. And we had, really an ally there that could have helped us out, a political figure in Washington, D.C. that could have helped us out. And we as a community didn't do what we should have done. And then the Portuguese government, there was a Portuguese American organization that we all know that's been mentioned here that had a meeting with the ambassador of Portugal at the time. And he said, and, pressured him. We really pressured him. And he said, no, I'm not going to talk to that politician about it. I don't want to ruin my good relationship with him. Okay, so it was better for the ambassador to have a good relationship with that politician than to stand up for the language of his country. That's kind of sad.
Mhm.
But that's the truth. So I think it has to be, you're right. It should come from up above, but I think we need to kind of
Right. We all have our role,
yeah,
right?
we
Exactly.
apply some pressure. You mentioned a good point there, which is, the spread of it. And Renato is something that probably we need to investigate. I mean, there are 510,000 students in the CSU system, but taking Portuguese is the schools teaching Portuguese, San Jose, Stanislaus, Fresno, San Diego, Fullerton, I think, has a program, but there's 23 campuses, and I don't know if there's Portuguese in more than 8 or 9, if they're at the most. And so I think these classes need to kind of transition a little bit more to also online. So maybe a student from Sacramento State doesn't have Portuguese but can take it through Renato at Stanislaus State. I think that's a complex situation, and the politics in the CSU are huge. But but indeed, it would be wonderful that there's more of this, because, if Renato all of a sudden, or myself, or anybody else, if anybody in the CSU system also, besides those students at his or her college, can also tap in to another 3 or 4 campuses that do not have Portuguese with an online language program, then it makes sense, then it opens up. We're trying to work that with a community college as well. The community colleges. The community college should be able to offer a program that's offered through all the community colleges. I mean, there's almost 900,000 students at a community college throughout California, so you should be able to do that. So there's these things that need to work, and we need to apply pressure, not just today. Luso American Education Foundation, Luso Financial, the Portuguese Fraternal Society of America, the consulates of Portugal, the Portuguese halls, everybody needs to apply pressure in order for this to boil up to the top and to have some answers. Because I totally agree with you. It's going to be gone if we don't do something with this, because it might not be the moda in 10 or 15 years. Clemente, your thoughts on future of the Portuguese education at Mission Oak? Obviously, you're there for at least another 2 or 3 years. Let's see. And then, but then, beyond you, like it was had to happen also beyond me and beyond anyone else. What do you look at your district? And I know you have contact with other high schools, and how do you see that as well?
Well, Nish, yeah, I remember having conversations with you, and when you were close to retiring, I always said, "Hey, when you get close to that 60-year-old area, it just seems like the teenagers, you just get tired a little bit." Well, I'm past the 60, and I'm feeling a little tired. So yes, I will, but I'm still energetic enough to go a couple more years, but then it'll probably be it. I go back to what José Luis said in the beginning, in respect just about maintaining the program. It does have to do a lot of times with the type of teacher that you are that is teaching Portuguese. I love teaching Portuguese. I love the language. But as a teacher, to maintain a certain levels, usually my registration of Portuguese ones, sometimes it's up 5, up 10, or down, but it's kind of average at 2 classes of 30 students. So usually a registration of 60 students. Then you move to level 2, some fall out, and it becomes a little lower. But that's how we get it. To maintain that level of program, you have to have at least 55, 58, 60 students to come in as freshmen, so they could put that as in 2 classes. What makes that happen? What makes that happen? Yes, it's kids that are Luso Americans that the families want them to take the Portuguese language. But it's also, again, the Hispanic students that want to come in. And a lot of my Hispanic students, they have siblings that have taken Portuguese with me, or have or cousins, or whatever, or friends, and they just word by mouth said, "Oh, take Fagundes, take Senhor's class. It might be easier than Spanish, or you might have." And as a teacher, yes, you got to keep classroom, intact, and that they're learning. But a lot of times as a Portuguese teacher, I have to be an actor. I have to do things to make them like they like you and want to come back. If it can't be just it's a little different. It's even different than some of the Spanish teachers that I've observed giving Spanish. So there's that. there's also, because, if we start losing numbers, then the people in power, but I won't go as far as to say that it's Portuguese government. I will say that it's people in local power that are ahead, my bosses and others. They have to also understand and make decisions that works for us. I know they probably make decisions that has to do with money, related money. Like this year, I don't always teach Portuguese 4. This year, Portuguese 4 was created by Mr. Borges. Probably, I don't know, but a long time ago. I know one of the main students. Portuguese 4 includes the teaching folklore curriculum, teaching some folklore. So this year I'm teaching it. But at the same time, I have a combo class of Portuguese 3 and Portuguese 4. That is, I asked in the beginning not to have that, because Portuguese 3, you still have to focus a lot on the grammar and reading, academic. Portuguese 4 wasn't made for Portuguese 3. Portuguese 4 was always taught by Mr. Borges in one campus. Now it's divided in all or 3 campus. So those kind of decisions don't help our program, don't help our numbers. So we have to work together. We have to listen to each other's, in my case anyway, each other's values of what things work and don't work, for things to work out right also. So.
Indeed, yeah, it's a collaborative. I think there's not enough of it at all levels. But how do you find time, first of all, and then how do you find funding? And that's where Sandra's right. The Portuguese government should have a lot of funding for people who teach Portuguese at all levels to get together maybe 2 or 3 times a year and discuss this. But it's got to be funding. It can't be it can't be, obviously, can't ask a teacher to go spend $550 or $600 in a weekend, to go talk about this situation. I mean, there has to be some funding for that. So I want to thank all of you. I'm going to pass it to José Luis. You'll have the last word. He's our padrinho here, like our godfather, like the movie. But so he's kind of he's the godfather. He can be that because he's just a few years older than I am. So just a couple of years. And so but José Luis, is as all of you know, he's a wise man. Above all, he's a wise man, and he's committed to this, even though he's retired. He loves the Portuguese language. It was an important part, for 30 plus years of his life. And so I'd like your thoughts on it. Your thoughts on what has been discussed, and any other words that you'd like to add to it. We'll close with your thoughts, Luis.
Well, this old wise man was here thinking as you were talking, and what came to my mind was the words of Pope Francis, whom I admire. I don't admire all popes, but I admire that one. And he said it was very important to build bridges rather than walls. And I see you doing that. It's very important to build the bridges within the Portuguese community, within the aspects of the Portuguese language, the Brazilian and the Portuguese, between the Portuguese and the Hispanics, and you were doing that. Unfortunately, this is, I feel, a movement that is yours and ours. I don't see that officially. I'll give you an example. There was a great fanfare lately about the accord with the LA Unified School District, led by a wonderful person, Superintendent Carvalho. And Portugal was very excited about that. The only thing that comes to my mind is that in LA Unified School District, most of the people who are Portuguese speakers are Brazilian, not Portuguese. Is Portugal willing to help that program when it comes to the nitty-gritty? I know, as someone who dealt with Camões before, that Camões does not have that intention of working with the Brazilian programs in this country. So Brazil, on the other hand, has got so many situations, such a big country, it doesn't really pay attention to these issues. So it is up to us, community, to develop these bridges. And as you said so brilliantly, several of you, about the connections with the Hispanic community. We really have in our communities, in San Jose, in the Valley, a very close connection outside of the school between the Portuguese and Hispanic community. In San Jose, for example, most of the quinceañeras, etc., are done in Portuguese halls. Portuguese Athletic Club, which has several aspects, has also soccer teams, and basically all the players are Hispanic, and they wear the Portuguese symbol on their jersey. So we have this connection through business, through work, through church, with the Hispanic community, through language, because we are different languages, but we all know that we have a lot of common elements. So building these bridges, let's continue building. Portugal, Brazil, the Portuguese way of speaking, the Brazilian way of speaking, and then with Hispanic. Just a small parenthesis here. You mentioned the Italians. You know, nobody questions the diversity of the Italian language. I have someone who married my uncle. She says, "Oh, I speak Sicilian Spanish," and they have trouble. The immigrants have trouble speaking with the other ones, much more than we Portuguese and Brazilians. I go to Brazil, and I have never had any problems communicating with anybody or anybody with me. In my own country, in my own island, I sometimes have trouble in understanding people from a particular village, etc. So there's such variety. So let's forget about this division, which no other language, Spanish, French, they don't do that. They just say we speak Spanish, we speak French. Come on, I've given examples before. Quebec and Paris, come on, difference. Argentina, Spain, and Puerto Rico, for example, such differences, but they don't talk about it. But why do we insist on talking about these varieties? We are the same language. We are a brotherhood linguistically, and sisterhood, and we have to just develop that and just tear down these walls. I don't want to quote Ronald Reagan, but tear down that wall, the wall of languages, and a separation of geographies, and let's be together with the Hispanic community. Let's also give to them, and let's receive from them, and let's accept with open arms this Brazilian community, and vice versa. We all at fault for these separations, these walls. But I know Renato, for example, is doing a wonderful job at separating that. Clemente, Sandra, I don't know you very well, but I can tell by the way you talk that you are a very open person. And my good friend Denise, I don't even have to talk about it. Thank you very much for accepting my old wise, not so wise, old words. And I really enjoy you all very much.
Thank you, Luis. Let's build walls. And I just want to add a little bit about what you mentioned about Alberto Carvalho. I think Alberto, it's a very hard job, okay? Being superintendent of the second and most diverse school district in the United States. And it's a unified district. So it's elementary and high school. Alberto has 515,000 students. Okay, Alberto has, I think it's like 40-some thousand teachers. Okay, it's not the same thing as being the superintendent of Tulare Joint Union High School District with like 300 or 400 teachers. It's a different situation when you have 40-some thousand. And so it's a hard job. But what he did in Miami, because he was there for, I believe, 5 years as superintendent. What he did in Miami is built a pretty successful Portuguese program, but it was a smaller district through the Brazilian community. So, because that is a big immigration, and as Renato knows better than we, in the Miami and Florida area. And so, but it was a plus for the Portuguese community because their kids were able to go to school there as well. So we have some hopes with Alberto. He's been here almost has been now 3 years. His contract was just now renewed for 4. He did this great, awesome thing, which is say that there's going to be tough years for education. So he does not want to renegotiate. He doesn't want to add one penny to his salary. Not the guy makes good money, but but he wasn't greedy. He's defending the students, of all ethnicities. He's having the courage to push out, those who want to get students away from there. And my sad part about it is that in the Portuguese American community in California, he's been here 3 years, conventions, conferences, Luso, PFSA, everybody else, nobody's ever thought about, paying homage to Alberto Carvalho. And that saddens me, because he's one of our biggest allies, and really something for us to be proud of. A guy who left Portugal at the age of 17, who lived for a year and a half in his car under a bridge as he was going to a community college. So it's a wonderful story. And I think that you know, at the official level, there should have been a formal official with all educators of Portuguese background, promoted by Portugal, somewhere in Los Angeles, because that's where he's at. Don't ask him to travel all over because he's busy. And we would all congregate there and meet this wonderful man that's doing, you know, that's kind of a role model for all of us. You know, I think, you know, all of us in education feel, you know, that he's really a role model. So these are the little things that sometimes Portugal forgets. These are little things that our Portuguese associations with money forget. And then in the long run, as Sandra eloquently put it, it costs us because as coisas nem sempre estão na moda. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. And sorry that we took so long. And thank you all for being here with us. On behalf of Luz American Education Foundation and PBBI Fresno State, I thank you very much. And our next conference, for those who are attending, it will be our kind of a Caminho dos 50 on the road to 50 memories and perspectives at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Million thanks to all of you.